but you shouldn't be telling yourself at the same time solving obvious problems that are readily addressed is a transformational deployment of generative AI. It actually is much more like that lazy man's AI strategy of bolting the AI onto an existing process.
At the same time, we've got coming up in May a podcast that I've already recorded with Eric Ries of the Lean Startup, who's now coming up with a book, Incorruptible, where he's challenging some of the fundamental beliefs about capitalism and short-term versus long-term view. And the argument being the sort of companies that he would be supporting, typically, maybe family-owned companies, foundation-owned companies who can see beyond the quarterly earnings report are the ones who are going to have value. If AI is going to be as transformational as you're suggesting, then goodness me, this is a real argument for being in a company that can stand the J curve. And from what I know, there are not as many as we'd like there to be. Your reflections?
I think that's a fair characterization. We do have, as the dominant form in many industries and many capital markets, the public company as the dominant structure. And I think your audience, being sophisticated, will immediately know all the common arguments about the pitfalls of a public company. Certainly, you can see consistently patterns of investment in consistently successful private companies. I'd point to examples like Koch Industries in the United States, the very large Texas grocer HEB, companies like Cargill in the United States, where they're managing for positive operating cash, but they're not so worried about period to period, year to year income. Multi-year to multi-year income, yes, but they're a little bit more patient with capital. They're a little less worried about temporary reverses, and that allows them to think more deeply about what type of structure, in this instance, processes we want to build that are going to last. Then one thing I find very strange about a lot of companies implementing AI right now is they are following this logic that you just espoused, or just described, that well, I'm charging you as a manager with implementing some AI in your process, and I want to make sure I get at least a 15% rate of return in year one for that. And I'd want the first instantiation to be launched within 6 months, maybe because the board strategy offsite is in 7 months. And where are all these numbers coming from? How would you know how to measure such a return? You're just providing that manager with strong signals. Go and get me an easy to implement, no-brainer return. Now you might say, well, Joe, why wouldn't I want that? Of course, you do want that, but you shouldn't be telling yourself at the same time solving obvious problems that are readily addressed is a transformational deployment of generative AI. It actually is much more like that lazy man's AI strategy of bolting the AI onto an existing process. Now, companies are very intimidated when I say some of these things because what you are doing when you really pursue a transformational AI strategy is fundamentally altering the way you manage work. The job descriptions of everyone in that process will be changed. The spans of control, the metrics and rewards and governance issues. You'll need to make a substantial change in associated processes.
This podcast is brought to you by Arkaro. To learn more about how Arkaro might help your organization adapt to a changing world, please visit our website, www.arkaro.com. More information in the show notes. Thank you.